going on? It's me, John D. Villarreal, and we are live right here to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And of course, this is the John D. Villarreal radio show on Newstalk 1040 AM. Now, I'm taping this, and it's going to be a replay when you hear this live on Christmas on Newstalk 1040 from 4 to 6 p.m. And we hoping you're having a great Christmas out there, no doubt about it. But we are talking about this right now. I had to talk about this. There's so many things to talk about. First of all, I have to talk about this. Very excited, very awesome to welcome a new sponsor here. Well, sponsors, I guess. Maserati of Sarasota, Alfa Romeo of Sarasota, and Sarasota Subaru, part of the Doherty Automotive Group. Awesome dealerships. Very happy there. I work there, so full disclosure about that. And the marketing director, the platform marketing director, and the platform internet director, and very happily doing that. And we're happy to bring this show here, sponsored one of our key sponsors of this program. But I'm also joined by Paul at Villarreal. We don't have him through the studio right now because we're doing this a little bit late at night live right here, and you're hearing it now on the radio, Newstalk 1040 AM. And I've got Paul on the speakerphone right here, and he's joining us. And I'm telling you, this dude is underground on the Twitter, okay? And now X, sorry. And he is just growing the following. I mean, you've got this thing into significant 5 digits right now. Is that not correct, Paul?
It is correct. And I'll take myself off of speakerphone. First, let me just say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to all the 1040 audience out there.
Yes. Merry Christmas. Definitely. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. And so, we're going to get into this. There's so much to talk about right now. So much to talk about here, with this. Now, I do have to say here a couple things, and I will be peppering in sort of some live reads, if you will, about Maserati of Sarasota, Alfa Romeo of Sarasota, and Sarasota Subaru, and everything like that. Right off Tamiami Trail in Sarasota, South Sarasota, right off Tamiami. It's very easy to get to. And we're talking about one of the biggest Subaru dealerships by volume in the state, and definitely in the region. General Manager Tim Reher leads the group over there, and we do so many different things, stuff like that. And here's the other thing. If you're looking for that high-end Maserati, I've got some awesome Grecales. We have some awesome MC20s. Recently selling an MC20 Cello. Fantastic vehicle. I mean, they're fun, they're fast. There's all kinds of different programs going out there. We're going to roll out stuff. Pretty soon we're going to be broadcasting from the dealership. And, I want to do a big announcement on this. But you're hearing it first right here, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And of course, you're hearing it replayed on Christmas Day on Newstalk 1040. But I'm gonna be peppering some of that stuff in there. Paul, the news of the day. Let's lead off with this for the Newstalk 1040 audience. Is the Colorado ruling? This is in my opinion. Listen, I'm a lawyer in California, not licensed in Florida, not practicing in Florida, no attorney-client privilege, not giving legal advice. Right? Okay. Went to law school at Berkeley, great law school, great constitutional, took constitutional law from the great John Yu, Professor Yu, who was on this program, I guess on this program. And I don't think I just don't know that you need any serious exposure to the law or constitutional, being a constitutional law expert, in my opinion, Paul, as a talk show host, or even talk show, to have some problems with this ruling. No disrespect meant to the Colorado Supreme Court out there, but how do you throw someone off the ballot for something that they have not even been charged or convicted with? I don't understand what's going on. Bring us up to speed, Paul.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's something that people are certainly bringing up. Also, I would say that one of the things that Alan Dershowitz brought up, of course, the professor emeritus from Harvard Law, is like, look, the way that the amendment reads is that Congress enforces it. In other words, state Supreme Court can't enforce it. It has to go through Congress. Well, guess what? They had an impeachment over this. They could have decided to kick him off the ballot, and they didn't. So, that's going to be a problem for this holding up. I told you off air yesterday, I think, that I read a thread on X by a lawyer.
Well, time out. Sorry. I want to clarify something, and maybe you can correct me, but I just want to make sure that we are as factual as we can be when we talk about these different things. There was 2 impeachments in Congress for President Trump. and he won both of them. Okay. However, I don't believe they impeached Trump for January 6th. January 6th happened after the 2020 election, right? And it was right before the inauguration of President Biden. So they didn't impeach President Trump for the January 6th. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you might correct me right now. It's been, you know what? It's been years. This is what I'm talking about. This is like old news, dude. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important, obviously. I mean, I get it, but it's like, it's been so long ago. So maybe I mean, now that I'm trying to remember now, I mean, I might be standing corrected for this right now. Go ahead, Paul. I mean, am I right or am I wrong about that?
I'm pretty sure that it was for January 6th.
Look at that.
The trial went on after he was out of office.
I think you're right. And then now I remember this, that's right. Because this is what I'm talking about, News Talk 1040 audience, and live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Things have been so crazy for so long. Like, I can't even remember all the craziness, because now that you say that, you're exactly right, Paul. I remember they're thinking, like, how do you impeach someone that's not even president anymore? Like, they've been and done the craziest things with these laws. Like, this is lawfare gone mad. And with this one, they've really, really jumped the shark. Okay, in my opinion, to use a Happy Days metaphor, they've really jumped the shark. Why? Because they are now trying to throw someone off the ballot who hasn't been charged or convicted of this crime. And in fact, even Morning Joe and Chris Christie, I don't know why Chris Christie's running other than to be a Trump negative type person, a Trump hater, if you will, quote unquote. And he said, "Oh, it's premature." Right. It just shows that someone somewhere may have some kind of, not to be conspiratorial, but there's no, to borrow a phrase from Bannon, but there's no coincidences. It's like, dude, you're giving up the playbook. Like some people can't even, the left is so out of control, they can't even stick to any playbook if there is a playbook. I mean, Paul, how insane is it? It's been so insane for so long. Like, I even forgot how insane it was back then, but it just shows that it's nonstop craziness. Paul, go ahead. Tell me what's going on with Colorado.
Yeah, this is what people got, the ongoing witch hunt, as Trump would say himself. Look, one of the things, just going back quickly to the impeachment, is I remember that certain senators were saying they weren't going to convict because they're not sure that they could do that when somebody's not in office. So yeah, it was happening when he was already out. I mean, it was just crazy. But if they wanted to come to that conclusion and kick him off the ballot, they could have done that. They're like, they could have the clause, like they convict and then remove from ballot. So they had that opportunity to do it, and they didn't do it. So that's what Dershowitz, I believe, is saying, is Congress has the right to do this. Nobody else does. They have the right. It's up to them to enforce the 14th Amendment, not a state Supreme Court. And so that's a huge problem. Another thing, and I told you this off air, was, and I'm just getting this secondhand from somebody who studied the decision, read the whole decision. They talked about it. What they said was, one of the things that the court used as an expert, I think the guy's a sociology professor, and he basically said, and I guess he's an expert on extremism or something. And he basically said, okay, when Trump said the negative things, or when he said things that seemed like he wanted, something to happen on January 6th, well, that was true. But when he said things that didn't seem like that, like, be peaceful and everything, that was false. So it's like, you have to believe these things. You have to believe these things he said, but you can't believe these other things he said. That's just not going to hold up.
Dude, it's so convoluted. You can't have this. This is so convoluted.
You cannot have that.
Now, I've been tuning that. I'm pretty excited here. I've been tuning my camera. We're getting it better and better and better. And I don't want to spend too much time for the News Talk 1040 audience. But, well, listen, here's what's exciting about it. Is that I'm getting this better and better and better. So that when you see, if you are able to follow along on News Talk 1040, and also, or later, when you see the replay, right, on live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and the videos will be up there, the videos are going to look even better. And pretty soon, we're going to be broadcasting from the fantastic dealership of Maserati Sarasota. And that is on 7641 South Tamiami Trail in beautiful Sarasota, Florida. Think about coming down there and just like seeing the cars, driving the new Maserati Grecale, which is the most affordable Maserati out there right now with the newest technology and the touchscreen and everything like that. With 0 to 60, every single model, the GT, the Modena, and the Trofeo are all 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. The GT 5.7 seconds. The actually it might be 5.3 seconds. Let me double check that. And the Modena is at 5 seconds flat, and the Trofeo with over 500 horsepower is like, dude, that's like mid threes. I mean, that's unbelievable. Or hey, you want to be practical? Totally cool. Go right across the street. Go to 7611 South Tamiami Trail, and right there you've got the amazing Sarasota Subaru that sells so many different Subarus. You want an Outback? We've got that. If you want a Crosstrek, you've got the new, the used. We have all kinds of stuff. Alfa Romeo's got new product. It's so fun and it's so nice, and I can't wait to be broadcasting live and talking to customers and having fun, and it's going to be great. So come visit us over there. You can see me. You can check out the cars. It's a blast. And also, guess what? We're just minutes away from one of the world's greatest beaches with Siesta Key. It's such a great beach. It's world famous. Dr. Beach has named it one of the best beaches in America multiple times. It's phenomenal. And you can also have dinner at one of the beautiful restaurants in Sarasota, downtown Sarasota, or at the UTC Mall, which is a fantastic mall. It's got all kinds of stuff. You've got Cheesecake Factory there. You've got Capitol Grill, or you want to go to St. Armand Circle right near Lido Beach. So many great things to do around the whole action of Maserati Sarasota, Alfa Romeo Sarasota, and Sarasota Subaru. I just want to put that in there. Now, let's talk about this. This Colorado ruling, I think, has just gotten totally out of control. What I wanted to say about the camera real quick is that I'm fine-tuning it. It's getting better and better. I see the picture. It's close. It's not fully there yet. But for a streaming solution, I think we're doing really well. But back to this Trump situation. I'm going to just tell you what's going on right now, audience. I'm going to bring Paul back in here. Oh, and a little bit of a programming note here. I have to sort of do my own sort of mental breaks here. So we're going to have unlike the normal show. Now, if you're hearing it on the radio, hopefully it's going to operate just the same way. If you're seeing it live, I'm going to do my 25-minute segments, take like a 1-minute break just to reset everything, and then we're going to go straight through. So we're not doing the normal 6-minute breaks. We're going to do short breaks. But if you're hearing it when you hear it on Newstalk 1040 AM, it's probably going to sound exactly the same. Hopefully, that's the goal. All right. So my bottom line for this is simple. This has virtually guaranteed now Trump the nomination. He was already there anyway, but this has just locked it up, particularly with what Vivek Ramaswamy has said. Okay, Vivek immediately says, you ban Trump, I'm off the ballot too. And, you know, we need to go through these delineations because we've had different statements from the different candidates. And we've had things that sort of sound somewhat like that, but are very much qualitatively different, in my opinion, Paul. And honestly, some people will say, listen, some of these candidacies, you know, we're not alleging anything, but hypothetically, how do I want to say this? Some people may potentially speculate that some of these candidacies really aren't viable if Trump remains as a viable candidate and on the ballot, right? So it's almost like sort of I don't want to say I don't know. I don't want to go farther than that. I'll leave it there. But Paul, I think Vivek has boxed in these candidates because he's clearly saying, listen, you can't stand for this. You're either with the people. This is the bottom line. You are being in the Colorado Supreme Court, and these people, the talking heads on, you know, the left-wing stations out there are basically trying to take the control and the vote and the optionality away from the people. And I think some people are talking about Byron Donalds, Congressman Byron Donalds and others, that they are disenfranchising the voters. This is such a powerful argument. And I think that people are just basically saying that we don't want any of this. Paul, go ahead.
Look, I thought that Congressman Matt Gaetz, I heard an interview he did on the radio or a clip from it, and basically what he said was, you know, we've heard all this talk recently about how Trump is supposedly a dictator. What Gaetz said is dictators are people that take their opponents off of the ballot. That's what a dictator is. So it's basically we have a flip-flop situation here. I agree with you. I think Vivek has boxed in other candidates. And I know that DeSantis went and did an interview, and they asked him if he would do the same thing as Vivek, and he said no. So immediately people were upset with him. So I agree with you. This has solidified Trump's support. I know people like Frank Luntz have said it's going to solidify his support. And, people are upset with this. I even saw, I don't know, CNN or somebody went out and they talked to people in Colorado, like kind of just man on the street type interviews.
Sure.
And they talked to a guy who's an independent he's like, look, I'm not really much of a Trump fan, but I don't think you should take people off the ballot. So you said as people don't, and Sean Parnell, who's here from PA, he's like, look, people in America do not like you telling them what they can't do.
Right.
Like you are not allowed to vote for this person. People don't like that. They don't. They will react to that. And so I agree with you. I think the net effect is that it helps Trump. And look, I think it's going to be very difficult for this ruling to stand. I mean, different lawyers that I have seen, people that I respect are like, yeah, it's not going to,
Well, and I haven't even fully dug into it, but isn't it something like they've already put a stay on their own ruling until January, and then it's maybe going to go to the Supreme Court? I mean, this just looks. The legal scholars that I've seen, whether it's Dershowitz and Professor Turley, have just crushed this thing. I mean, it looks so bad. And the thing is if you were trying to disabuse people of the idea that there is some kind of lawfare, some kind of politicization of this entire process, this is definitely not what you would want to do. I mean, this looks so bad. It's like, voters, you can't vote. We're not going to allow you to vote for this person. It's so weird. And here's the thing. If Trump is everything, I mean, again, this goes back to Limbaugh and trust the audience is smarter than you think they are, right? If Trump is everything that you're saying that he is, so bad, authoritarian, blah, 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 etc., what are you worried about? You think that people can't see that? Why would you not allow people to vote for that and stuff? And well, John, they've elected demagogues before. And okay, dude, you're the ones that have been championing democracy. What exactly does your democracy look like? What does democracy stand for? The bottom line is that you have to allow people to vote and have representative government. And you're trying to do something that is, you're having all elected Democratic elected judges, I think all of them, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, that are taking someone from the other party off the ballot in a Republican primary. It's just so crazy, Paul. I mean, am I getting this wrong? Where am I going wrong here?
No, you're not going wrong. So there are 7 judges. They're all were put in by Democrats, and the decision was 4-3. So even 3 Democratic established judges didn't like this. And one of the dissenting opinions was like, "Look, I've never seen in 30 years I've been in this, been in law. I've never seen a case like this where there's no so poor due process. Like we're just kind of railing this through." And I don't think you're getting anything wrong about this. And look, people are just unhappy. And I think the truth is that it's exactly what you just said. And Frank Luntz, who's a pollster and strategist does a lot of work for the GOP, what he said is exactly what you said, which is, look, this proves Trump's theory that he's being persecuted. So this is proof of that theory. And that's going to help him in the end.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of people say, this has opened up an absolute Pandora's box, because no sooner did you get this ruling than you see the lieutenant governor or a big time official in California say, we need to get him off the ballot here. Other states are weighing in, and I think Governor Greg Abbott out there in Texas was saying, hey, we're going to get Biden off the ballot because of the immigration. I mean, this can just get ridiculous so quickly. It's not even, and we're talking about, I'm jumping ahead. I'm talking very fast. Let me slow down. they want to use the 14th Amendment. You just said it right there. We talked about it. I brought that up in our conversation earlier. What's one of the biggest things with the 14th Amendment? Now, hopefully, it's really late, so hopefully I'm not forgetting my constitutional here. What about due process, dude? What about due process? What is due process talking about? And again, I'm not giving any legal advice. Due process, I'm a talk show host. Due process says you need to have, right, the proper process, in this case, a trial, right, by your peers, whatever it is, and stuff, and actually have that go through to be found guilty of whatever. You are disenfranchising a candidate. You are disenfranchising voters without any process and any proof and any right to face your accusers and right to your jury and all these things. This is insane. I mean, and these are the people that want to wave around the 14th Amendment. What is at the heart of the 14th Amendment? Let me look it up. Make sure I'm not too late here. I'm not forgetting anything. I mean, Paul, why I double check that? I mean, how crazy is that? What are your comments on that?
It's totally crazy. And look, part of due process is having enough time to provide a reasonable legal defense. So, like, one of the things with the January 6th case is, like, there's, like, millions of documents. And the special counsel's trying to, like, rush the trial in, like, I don't know, 3 months. It's like, there's no way you can get through that many documents.
Let's talk to it right now. Let's talk to it right now. 14th Amendment, Library of Congress. I'm going to cite it, right? I mean, we're going to, we may talk about citations later and some of the stuff coming out of Harvard and stuff like that, right? We may talk about that. But right here, 14th Amendment, Library of Congress. Let's get this right here. And let me try to open this up in another, I don't know. Okay, here, hold on. Oh, now we're getting in. Okay, I'm going to go back here. This is off of Google. So I get, okay. But it's 14th Amendment, quick Google search. Library of Congress. Section 1 writes, quote, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. I mean, it can't be any clearer. It's right there. And they want to wave around this section that was pretty specific to the Civil War with former, Confederate officers and different stuff like that. We're talking about 2023, and we're talking about the main element of the 14th Amendment with due process, and you've jumped the shark and everything like that. And this just looks brutally bad. And it looks brutally bad not just for the Colorado Supreme Court, but all the Democrats and the talking heads in the media and the left wing that are trying to jump on this and amplify it and let's get them out, let's do this. It's been a nonstop, as Trump has said. It looks like a witch hunt, if you will, against Trump. But it also, Paul, I think, does not bode well for these other candidates. And I think it does further to expose, as Trump, as Vivek would say, the super PAC puppets. And it's just unfortunate. I mean, DeSantis had, I thought, a really great debate. He needs to go with that. He's had problems with this campaign and people, shuffling the deck over there and whatever. And, listen, here's where I'm at. These candidates, we have a minute and a half here. I got to wind it down for this segment. These candidates have to say to themselves, we're weeks out now. Days out, really, honestly. It's going to be what it's going to be. But you need to say, hey, what's this party about? What am I about as a candidate? Again, I've been talking about it. Tucker Carlson's been talking about it. Elon Musk has been talking about it. Like, this is the time, the existential time, where you look into the abyss and you say, what are we about as people, as Americans, as this country, the political system, all this type of stuff. Beyond your campaign or anything like that, number one. Number two, the die is pretty much, go do your campaigning, but don't expect anything to massively change out there. So how do you want to be viewed going forward? Really, that's what it is. I mean, if you think there's some super duper, quadruple, tripleplex, Hail Mary pass that's going to get you the Iowa caucus. We'll talk about these polls in New Hampshire. I do not think so. I'm a political expert. I just can't see it. I think it's done. I think this supercharges Trump. I think it takes all the oxygen out of the room. So now, and we'll talk about this next segment, Paul, I'll bring you in on this. these candidates have to figure out what they're going to do about it. And I think Vivek positioned himself perfectly, and I think he was way ahead of the game. And he just shows how much smarter he is than the rest of the room. Honestly, I'll be honest with that. And I know DeSantis is very credentialed as well. They're all smart, okay. But Vivek is head and shoulders above them. Anyway, all this and more, so much more to talk about. We're going to take a very short break here, a normal break on the radio here. You're listening to the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM and live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, what's going on? It's me, John D. Villarreal. We are back. Second segment here, Christmas Day broadcast, live right now on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. A little bit earlier than that, but this is replayed right now on Newstalk 1040 for you, the Newstalk 1040 audience. On Christmas Day, we hope everyone's enjoying their Christmas, having a good time, enjoying, whether you're with family, friends, by yourself, doesn't matter. It's Christmas, and happy holidays to everyone here. Joined by Paul F. Villarreal. We've been talking about so much. We've been talking about, well, first of all, we've been talking about our new sponsor, our new sponsors, right? Maserati Sarasota. Sarasota Subaru and Alfa Romeo of Sarasota, right off Tamiami Trail 41, very easy in South Sarasota. We have such a great time. We have so many great cars in there. Anything from the Subaru Crosstrek, the Subaru Impreza. Don't forget about the Impreza. The Impreza is impressive, in my opinion. You've got the Subaru Outback, the iconic Subaru Outback. We have so much inventory right there. I do work there, so full disclosure on that. And they're a new sponsor of the John D. Villarreal radio show here on News Talk 1040. But we have the new Alfa Romeo Tonale. We've got the new Maserati Grecale. We've got some cool Maserati Grecale Trofeos in there. We've got so many different things. MC20, the supercar. Come see it. Check it out. It doesn't matter. You don't have to buy. Just come say hi. Just say hi to me. Say hi to the team. It's so great. And I mean, you can do it, anytime. Not on Christmas, all right? But I mean, there's so many normal business hours. Come on down. See us at Maserati Sarasota, 7641 South Tamiami Trail, Sarasota, Florida. 34231. It's so easy to go down there, or just call us up 941-925-1234. How easy is that? 941-925-1234. Come on down. See me, John Villarreal, right there at Maserati Sarasota, Alfa Romeo Sarasota, and Sarasota Subaru. Okay, so Paul, we're talking about this ruling, okay? And this is a really crazy situation in Colorado. Now, where do you think this is? Let's spin it forward we talked about some of the legal stuff. I expect this to be just crushed and slapped down by the Supreme Court. I think that the left has been trying to generate pressure. Oh, John, you're crazy. Okay, well, why would we have the protests in front of justices' houses? Why did we have doxing of where the justices live? We've had all kinds of different things like that. I don't want to get too mired in that, but I expect that the Supreme Court should shut this down because it's just so brutally bad from, I just don't see how you can even do this for the reasons that we talked about. I think this is legal. Even Hugh Hewitt punked someone out, Jessica Tarloff, saying that Hugh Hewitt, who I consider, I'm not trying to be a punk, but GOPE, okay, establishment, right? Meet the press, all this type of stuff. And he shut it down, like quick. The only people that are even supportive of this are the diehard left-wingers and the diehard never-Trumpers. But I expect, that this is going to be shut down pretty quick. So then the question becomes political impact. Tell us about what your view is of the political impact. I think this supercharges Trump's campaign. I think it basically locks up him getting the nomination. But also, do you think this has impact on the general election? And do you think this could potentially bring down all of this lawfare situation that's been going on, because I think it just, as Frank Luntz, I think rightly says, this just puts a spin on all of this, and it just looks like it's just, was basically, as Trump might be saying, a witch hunt from the beginning. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that. And let me just say one more thing about the substance of the arguments that the court made in Colorado. Apparently, they leaned heavily on the January 6th committee, which many people thought was stilted towards the leftward perspective, along with Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. So that's where a lot of what their stuff is coming from. That's what they're trying to rely on. But I just don't think that's going to hold up. The political impact, I'm glad you said that, because one of the other things that Matt Gaetz said on this radio appearance was, look, this could have down ballot effects in Colorado, and that could decide the balance of power in the House. That's a really important thing. I mean, you have to think about that, and the Supreme Court's going to have to think about that. This have big effects.
Let me jump in here real quick. Maybe I'm jumped ahead here, and let me try to do a better job as a talk show host here. We're talking about the political impact. What is the public reaction? What are people saying about this? What's the vibe? Do we have polling? I think people are viscerally reacting to this, but I know you've seen some stuff from some people on the street. What's the public saying about this?
What I see on X is people are really upset. And some people are scared. They're like, what is going on with our country? I mean, people don't expect this to happen here. Look, I'll give you a historical example. In the 1920s, there was a candidate who was a socialist. He was a declared socialist candidate who was anti-war. He was against the World War I and the U.S. going in. Eugene Debs, he was convicted of sedition. He was in jail. Well, guess what? He stayed on the presidential ballot. How can you have that precedence and then try to take Trump off? It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. But people are reacting to this as you would expect. Like I said, it's a mixture of anger and fear, because people think that this should not be taking place in America.
Well, and this goes to what I've been saying for a while now, which is where we're at now. And it's not just here. If you look at, unfortunately, if you look at what happened in New Zealand, you look at what's going on up in Canada, you look across a lot of different places, and you've now, I think, for a lot of people, including a lot of people that, and we'll talk about this, a lot of people that haven't voted in a long time, maybe ever, are now coming onto the Trump train, if you will. And it's no longer, it's no, I mean, I think there's a much bigger only Trump vote than a never Trump vote. Do you see what I'm saying by that? I think there's a lot of people that are like, look, tweets, I don't care about the tweets. I don't care about the past. I don't care about his comments. I don't care about anything other than what's going on. Like you said, we don't like the current trajectory. We don't like right track, wrong track, but also we're not recognized. I'm you have to be careful how you say this, because, oh my gosh, they're going to try to twist it. It's like people are concerned that we have a proper representative republic still, that America is still going to be America or whatever, you know what I mean? And that's only talking about, that's not, first of all, we're peace, love, freedom, opportunity, equality for everybody, all that type of stuff. So we don't want anything misconstrued or misquoted or anything like that. Number one. Number two, we are simply talking about our government, our way, our system, our way of operating politically, right? And which is what? The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, including the 14th Amendment, due process, which is what we're talking about right now. And so I want to know, how big, and this is only a guess, all we can do is guess at this thing, but you're seeing out there in X, right? How big do you think this only Trump vote is, Paul?
The only Trump vote is bigger than the never Trump vote. That is correct, and that has been polled, and that is accurate. That is true. So that we know that. Let me just say one other thing about, just going back to the political impact. Yes, what is the effect is this going to have? Well, they're trying to bring up stuff from like 2020 arguments over state votes, but exactly what you said earlier. You didn't even remember what happened with the impeachment.
I know.
Nobody's thinking about this.
And I look at and we're experts, and I have a super memory, and we go over everything. The problem of it is none of this makes sense, and it's been nothing but a crazy Looney Tunes ride the whole time. It's almost like watching some bizarre cartoon on the Cartoon Network. Or who knows what, and it's like some marathon, and I'm trying to remember what happened 20 cartoons ago, okay? Because we're so divorced from any kind of normalcy or reality. Because I mean, and I always thought this was kind of a jokey, pejorative, stuff like that. But it may be real. There may be a Trump derangement syndrome out there that has driven these liberals just so crazy that they just can't even, I don't know what it is, dude. But I mean, people are tired of this super administrative state and these bureaucratic, what's the right way? I'm thinking of a couple of different ways to say this. They don't like the bureaucratic state, okay? And nobody's against experts. Nobody's against civil servants. I've known lots of great civil servants. Obviously, went to grad school at Johns Hopkins. I know a lot of great people in the government. My dad was in the government. My brother's in the government. That's fine. It's not about populism, us versus them, or anything like that. It's just about freedom, right? When you have government, this is just like there to some degree. I'm someone that likes to grow the pie and find win-win, stuff like that. But in certain cases, there is a zero-sum game, right? I mean, if you're in a room and you have air quality, you're going to have a certain, you're going to have a certain amount of oxygen and a certain amount of carbon monoxide and nitrogen and different elements, right? Different gases. So, if you up one, and then there's only so much, there's only a certain percentage that you're going to breathe in. So that to stop that extent, there's a zero-sum game. In this case, there's a zero-sum game in terms of the more power and reach the government has, the less freedom you have. Now, again, we talk about the political spectrum, right? At the absolute, and there's a lot of people that I think either don't know it or skew it, At the absolute right, you have anarchy, no government, right? Law, and that's not good. It's Wild West, right? Because if you leave your house to go work, someone can steal your stuff. You don't have police. You don't have contract. That doesn't work. At the absolute left, you have total state control, whether that's a monarchy, dictatorship, communism, whatever, different flavors of that. Okay. But so the more power of the government, so you need some level of government. The question is where you put the line. But the more power the government has, the less freedom and independence that you have. And so I think that people are feeling like, listen, this isn't the American dream that we grew up with. You've got people that are obviously still to this day risking their lives to come over here to have that freedom, to have that economic opportunity. It's not just for money. I mean, the liberals are money. It's not just for money. There's people, even some of these big, it's easy, maybe it's easy to talk when you have $1 billion, but it's a lot of historical figures have sacrificed a lot of things to have freedom. If you don't have that, and Paul, it starts, one of these we're on the air and I've got to show you, it starts with freedom of speech. You've got people getting canceled all the time on these social media platforms that really are the town square. And what's more fundamental than freedom of speech and the freedom to vote for the candidate of your choice? This is what's on the ballot, right? This is what's in jeopardy right now. And you've got a court that's coming in there and saying, we're not going to let you do that before the person's even been convicted of what they're allegedly pulling them off the ballot for. It's just so bizarre. And it reminds me of this in a certain way, the New York case with the fraud case where the people who lent Trump the money, didn't complain about it. All the money's been paid back. Like, I just don't get it. Like, go ahead.
Not only that, the judge predetermined the case before he even heard the evidence. He said he was like a liable or whatever. It's just ridiculous.
I don't want to psychoanalyze anybody, but I got to ask. I mean, we're here on the air, and for the Newstalk 1040 audience, and the live audience right here, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Do they know how? I mean, the liberals like that are on this Trump derangement syndrome. Do they understand how crazy they look? I mean, that's what I want to know. Like, do they know? That's what I mean. I'm not phrasing this quite right. Let me see if I can formulate this a little bit better. It's so bizarre. Does this make any sense to them? Do they in their mind, do they think that they're doing the right thing? Do they think that this makes some kind of sense? Have they talked themselves into this? Has the echo chamber of the 24/7 cable network news just, toxified their mind to this extent? Or do they know, is it the ends justify the means? That Trump is so bad, that they don't like him, that it's just all political. It doesn't matter. Whatever we have to do to take him out, it doesn't matter. Because some people were kind of making that argument a little bit early on this Trump, witch hunt train, if you will, to use Trump's terms, in terms of like, well, we know this is if you just get rid of Trump, then we'll go back to normal kind of deal. Like, I mean, where are we at right now? Is there any touch of reality? Is this all Machiavellian, ends justify the means, or have they convinced themselves that they're somehow right? Because we know the left likes to moralize, like they've got the moral high ground. What do you think, Paul?
I think that the people in D.C., like on the left, that are on the ground level executing the strategy, I think they are coming from a Machiavellian now. I think this is an ends justifies the means thing for them. But you never know. Sometimes you start doing something and then you end up believing it, even if you started off not believing it. I will tell you this. I spoke to somebody today in our family who is definitely not for Trump, and they just went off on this anti-Trump rant. So the problem is that for what's Machiavellian,
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you probably do. So what's Machiavellian for the people involved, for the person just out in orbit, out where Neptune is, they believe it. They believe it. And so they really get caught up in it. And as we both know, there's been so much like agitation against Trump that people have gotten caught up in it. So I think that the bubble of kind of that world is a lot smaller than it used to be, because just like people are like, well, maybe it wasn't that bad because, it's not that great under Biden. Maybe Trump really wasn't this evil monster that we portrayed him to be. But there's still a bubble. There is still a bubble. I just don't think it's as big.
Yeah, that's super crazy. I mean, I think that part of what you said there, and I'm no psychologist, but I do know that like when people make a choice, they become more invested in them, and it's almost like I forget what the bias is called. I'm sure I'll remember as soon as I get off the air, but it's something to the effect of like it's kind of like when the bigger investment that you put in something, the more you become psychologically invested in it because you don't want to feel like you made the wrong choice or something like that. So the more that you go down this rabbit hole, the more you kind of convince yourself like, yeah, we're doing the right thing, even though like you're just not, and so
let me just say
go
this.
ahead.
I think you're talking about confirmation bias.
Maybe. I don't know if that's maybe. Yeah. I think I'll remember it later. There's like all these different biases I study in one of my classes. It doesn't matter. You understand the audience will understand what I'm talking about here. The more you're invested in something, like whether it's anything, I took this job, or I went to vacation here, or who I married, whatever it is, it's like the more of an investment you make in it, the more you want to be like, yeah, I did the right thing, right? Okay. So, you go see a movie and it's just terrible. Oh, no, that movie was good. No, it really wasn't. But you believe that it is now. Okay. So the psychological, it's really wild how you, and they've done this. They've done all kinds of different little mini experiments or gags or pranks, if you will, where you see some people on the street. You read them this stuff that and you tell them that Trump did this. Oh yeah, he's so bad. He's so isn't. Then it's like, oh, it was Biden that did it. Then all of a sudden they have nothing to say. And it's like, dude, we're so partisanized and polarized at this point. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know where we go next at this, but I think that this is why there's a lot of people are saying only Trump, because these tactics, if this is allowed to stand, what's next? I mean, do any elections even matter? I mean, it's like, it just can't be this way. It can't be where, and that goes back to what I was trying to say before. There's a certain segment of the okay, so follow what I'm saying here. The investment bias, right? I don't know exactly, I can't remember exactly what it's called. I'll remember it later. That's not important, but let's just call it, for the purpose of this show right now, the investment bias, right? We've got about 5 minutes to wrap this up. You have that. I think what Trump has done, and this is why people talk about the Matrix, right? And use that kind of analogy, because it's a pretty good analogy in a lot of ways. It just as a metaphor, obviously. Once you're Neo, right, the main character in the Matrix, and you see Agent Smith and some of these other agents kind of flicker, you can't unsee it. And I think now that Trump has injected this different equation, this, people talk about blue pill, red pill, this different look, perspective into the system. All of a sudden, I feel like, Paul, some of these people, maybe like the ones you talk about, have been so propagandized and so invested their entire lives, and some of them are long lives now, of a certain outlook, a certain way of thinking, a certain belief system, and that's being jeopardized. It almost reminds me back in the day when Galileo was trying to tell people in the courts of Europe that the world was not flat. And a lot of people didn't want to hear that because it challenged their preconceived orthodoxies and worldviews and paradigms. And that was very threatening to their worldview. No different than all of a sudden now it's starting to come out and be a little bit more mainstream that, oh yeah, there might be aliens, there might be UFOs, that might be a thing. 30 years ago, you were a crackpot. At some point, maybe the government wanted to talk to you and Project Blue Book, and maybe you could have lost your job. So when you've got these things that kind of shake people's belief, I don't think people understand how propagandized they really are. And I think Trump is exposing some of that, Paul. And I think that is threatening to some of these people's worldview who have become so crazy invested in it. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Just to give you an example of that, how you can kind of go in and out of propaganda. Today, somebody pointed out, today, the Washington Post removed its section of the war on Ukraine. Why? Because it's not going maybe the way that they wanted it to go. So it's kind of going down the rabbit hole now. It's getting disappeared. Look, you know this. The audience doesn't know this necessarily. I am a former liberal. I used to be Democrat, very, very left. And I believed everything. I totally bought everything. I totally bought Republicans are evil and all this stuff. I was completely propagandized. And it doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. Sometimes the most intelligent people are the most propagandized. So I hope that people are coming out of that. I think that they are, because the propaganda has been so extensive and intense. The reality can't live up to that.
And that's a very interesting question. And we only have a couple minutes here left in this segment. But if you can remember very quickly, very briefly, I mean, obviously, I was hammering on you and trying to get you to look at different sources, because, I mean, my thing is believe whatever you want. But I'm not afraid of facts. I'm not afraid of evidence. If I have the right information, if I have the right argument, I'm not afraid of anyone, presenting on a different side, right? I mean, in other words, if I know 2 plus 2 is 4, I'm not scared of you telling me 2 plus 2 equals 5. That doesn't threaten me. You understand? Because I know 2 plus 2 equals 4. People are only threatened if they know that maybe what they're doing doesn't make sense, right? And so, or etc. And so this is the whole Aristotle analogy about, coming out of the cave into the light and all this type of stuff, right? So my question very, very briefly is, can you, and maybe we pick up on the next segment, what do you think was the main thing that changed your perspective?
Oh, like you said, we could talk about this after the break. The main thing that changed my perspective was when I saw the Democratic primary in 2008 and kind of how it worked out between Obama and Clinton. And I just started seeing like how things were going and just more of kind of the machinations on the left that I thought was so great, and they were above it all. And I'm like, I'm seeing things that I don't like here. And so I just started looking at it in a different way. And I'm like, you know what? This is what you and other people have been trying to say all these years. And it started to make sense to me. And the more I looked, the more it made sense.
Right. So when you get off the whole team's idea of our side versus their side, and you see things happening on your own side, then it gives you a little different look at it. Maybe not unlike what Vivek is saying about the super PAC puppets and things like that. So much more to talk about. We're going to take our second break here. You're listening to the John D. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with plenty more. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM. Special Christmas broadcast. If you're listening to this on Newstalk 1040 AM, I have taped this before, the week before. If you're listening to it live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, we are live right now, no doubt about it. And I'm here with Paul at Villarreal by phone, and we've been talking about a lot of things. We're talking about the Colorado ruling by the Supreme Court, which potentially takes Trump off the primary ballot, which is really crazy. We're talking about the political impact of that in our second segment. And in our third segment right here, right now, this would be the 5 o'clock hour on Christmas Day on Newstalk 1040 AM. Second hour right here on the live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. We're talking about, and we're excited to talk about that we are sponsored by Maserati of Sarasota, Alfa Romeo of Sarasota, and Sarasota Subaru, part of the Doherty Automotive Group. Come on and down and see us in South Sarasota, right off Tamiami Trail. It's great. It's easy. Come on, drive and see some great used cars. The Subaru Crosstrek, the Subaru Impreza, the Subaru Outback, the Subaru Ascent, Subaru Forester. So many great cars right there. Or if you want to see some luxury and some performance and some awesome vehicles from Stellantis, hey, we've got the stuff over there. Maserati Grecale, Maserati Levante, the supercar Maserati MC20. We also have the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, the Alfa Romeo Giulia, and of course, the brand new Alfa Romeo Tonale. Come on, see me and the team right there off of Tamiami Trail in South Sarasota. Can't wait to see you. Or listen, you can also call us up. If you want to call us up, that's no problem. Call us up, ask some questions, see what's going on at 941-925-1234. 941-925-1234. Once again, the address for Maserati Sarasota is 7641 South Tamiami Trail, Sarasota, Florida. Hey, listen, Paul, we're talking about what happened with you and how you kind of changed, right, from a liberal to a conservative. And it was a process. And at first, you didn't want to hear it. You talked about that election, I believe it was 2008, in the primary, right, where you had Secretary Clinton against now President Obama, right? And at that time, Senator Obama, and just some of the tactics, whether it was the astroturfing, that was a rough and tumble primary, and you had a lot of people that were pretty bitter on, that were for Secretary Clinton, and they saw the tactics of the left, and in that specific instance, it was people supporting President Obama. Walk us through a little bit more of that. So I think that's insightful.
Yeah, I became a part of, there were kind of Democrat break-off groups. There were several of them. And I would talk with these people. One of them was like, Democrats for McCain or something like this. But yeah, of course, that was McCain ended up. And look, I think that the tactics that I saw, and again, I respect President Obama. It's nothing about this, that time is over. But at that period of time, I was a political novice. I didn't know anything. This is when I first started paying attention, and really on a serious level. And what we've come to see now, like the protesting or maybe some of the aggressive community organizing, like, kind of like, hey, we think this, or we're going to call your company this unless you do what we want type of thing. And I just started seeing some of these tactics and the smearing, like they smeared Bill Clinton, and I just didn't like it. I'm like, this is not right. This is not how, if you're in a boxing match, you got the Queensberry rules. You should fight by the rules. And I felt like they weren't doing that. And so it just seemed unfair to me. And so I started looking at this from, my side can be bad too. The Democrats are not necessarily perfect either. And then I just started to kind of expand my horizons about, maybe I should look at some conservative ideas. Maybe I should look at things from the right-wing perspective. And I just kept looking at it. And I think I found a lot of what you're saying, what you said before, which is, the left-wing stuff is the statism stuff. And that's kind of more of like, they go on like groups, the bureaucracy and everything. But you sacrificed individual freedom for that. And I think we've seen over these last 10 years, especially, it's like there's been a lot of changes, a lot of kind of massive changes in a short period of time. And sometimes people are just getting caught up, and even parents can't do what they want to do necessarily. And it's like, it's become a lot more important to me, the freedom aspect of things. And I'm definitely a clear conservative now in most respects. And look, I'm a lot happier, and I know that I'm a lot, I know things now. Before I was propagandized. Now I actually know things for real. And it feels a lot better to actually be in the real world. Like you said, you're the only one in our family that was like that. And you knew that right from the beginning. You were always like that. You were always individualist. I remember, back in 1988, you were listening to the Rush Limbaugh show then. He was up in Sacramento, just had started. You were always on that bent. And I just say now, you were right. I agree with you.
Well, I appreciate that. And before I get in, I have some things to say about that. But what percentage guesstimate right now do you think of people would you still consider propagandized? And would you say that it's more on the left or more on the right? I think you have stuff on the right too with the GOP and the super PAC puppets and things like that, right? I mean, you see some candidates out there and who, you look at how people feel about Governor or Senator Romney now versus how they felt about him when he ran for office before as president. I guess, is it a left-right thing? Would you say more on the left are propagandized and the more on the right? And what rough percentage would you say are people that are still propagandized out there?
I think of the right wing, the conservative people, I think you'd have probably about 25% of the party are never Trumper type people, like establishment people or wealthy people or whatever that just don't like Trump for whatever the reason is. Are those people propagandized? I don't know. I think some of those people, they know what Trump is, and maybe he's a threat to their power or their interest. So they just want to get rid of them, but they aren't necessarily propagandized. I mean, maybe they believe the propaganda, maybe they don't. So I would say, look, a lot of the younger right-wing people, they're online. They're getting exposed to, much more truth than what other younger, older generations couldn't get exposed to. So I think there's fewer than that. As far as the left,
let me just step in and say that that's a really good point, right? Which is, you only know. I mean, I did a whole show on this. How do you know what you know, right? You can only know the information. It's hard to go beyond the information that you're shown, at least on a national, international level. Like, yes, I can go out and talk to my neighbors and see what's going on in my town and have a read. We all have an internal and, if you will, an instinctual read on the economy, at least the economy around us. But how do I know what's going on in Ukraine or Israel or DC or anywhere else? It's only through media. And so, when you live back in the days, and we grew up in the days where there was only 3 major broadcast networks, maybe you want to throw PBS in there too, I don't know, and that's fine. But very, very different than today with the internet. So I think that's a very, very good point, right? You can't blame people for what, there's, if they don't have access to information, there's much more access to information, differing points of view now, even though there's attempts to, label things as misinformation and all that type of stuff. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of the threat, I guess, of there are forces that would like to get back the old way. And the only way they can do that is to take control of the internet, and people don't want that to happen. So that's what I was thinking anyway about the conservative perspective. I think there's fewer people propagandized. Yeah, are there some? Oh yeah, of course. What tends to happen, I think, on the conservative side is you get more of the conspiratorial thing. You know what I mean? You get kind of more of like, I don't know, like this is whatever the conspiracy is that they're thinking about. I think on the left wing, I think there are a greater percentage of people propagandized. And I would say that because there's a larger echo chamber. There's a bigger, the network of media on the left is larger. There's just far more outlets and everything. So, like you said, if that's all you consume, then that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to believe. And it's going to be reinforced because you're going to see it 10 different places, not one place, 10 places. And look, what's really sad is that because of the bias that seems to have kind of made its way into different parts of our culture, including colleges and different places, sometimes the people that are the most educated or the most informed, quote unquote, they're the most propagandized. They're the furthest kind of like.
Well, there's been studies on that too, which is it's I have to watch myself because I have so much education, from great institutions. But there's been studies that the more educated you are, the less creative you become, right? Because you sort of. It teaches you how to think. I mean, the great education teaches you how to think, but also teaches you ways to think, but also teaches you a certain approach. This is what works in academia. This is what works in elite education. So instead of doing things all the way over here, you do things. And we've all heard stories about these prodigies that just will, do something, or given some equation that's unsolvable. I remember I read this thing. There was 2 things that were unsolvable. This guy comes in late for class. I can't remember where it was. And was given 2 equations that were supposedly unsolvable. He didn't know that. He thought it was just homework. Went home, solved them, and pretty soon here comes and it just becomes like some professor the point being is, when you learn the established ways of doing things, it's hard to see things from a different perspective, like the Captain Kirk thing. If you can't win the game, change the game, right? I mean, sometimes you have to look at things totally freshly, creatively, to do things in a different way. But I guess to understand this, and I don't want to spend too much time psychoanalyzing everybody, but or politically or otherwise, but it's from a market perspective, because I'm a business person, right? I've got my MBA and everything, and with honors, and member of Beta Gamma Sigma and all that. But it's like I hope I remembered that right. But It seems like there's a clear market demand for what Trump is saying. Now, to me, I see Vivek and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Why wouldn't there be? And there is this, Byron Donalds and Gates, and there's plenty of others. But you would think that we would see a lot more Me Tooism, if you will, in terms of a copycat or at least of the approach, the policies, whatever. Why aren't more politicians looking and sounding like Donald Trump? Right? I mean, it just doesn't, I don't understand it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And so I think that, when, you had President Kennedy that was very successful, or Reagan. I mean, okay, but let's use that. Perfect example. Reagan wins. He becomes this iconic president, everything like that. We saw so many politicians out there, even the establishment types, that would try to embrace that mantle of Reagan and reinvoke that and sound like him and everything like that. And I think on the left, you see the same thing with President Obama or President Clinton. And I don't think you see that to the same degree with President Trump. You do see some of that, but it's just surprising to me from a market standpoint. Now, you see that internationally. We're seeing that with, some of the different politicians, whether it's Orban or in Hungary or Miley down in Argentina, and there's a lot of other places that we're seeing this, but you're not seeing that as much here. What do you agree with that? And if you agree with that, why is that?
Yeah, I do agree with it. And I think part of it is a deliberate attempt. We talked about, propaganda. So a deliberate attempt to pretend that doesn't exist, to pretend that the demand isn't there. And we've talked about with X and Twitter how it was kind of a fake created reality. That's what I think is happening with Trump. No, you don't want that. That doesn't exist. There isn't that demand, but of course there is a demand. And I think, talking about markets, it's an underserved market. One of the things that's kind of analogous to this is when Roseanne came back and put on her sitcom and was getting like 30 million viewers.
Yeah.
Now, she didn't last very long, but it's like there's a whole group of people that want that, but they're just determined that I think the people that have the power to put on these shows don't want to do it. They just don't want to do it. Like Disney doesn't want to do. They want to do certain things and they don't want to do other things. So I think that that's what we're seeing more of now. We're in the era now of when a product is put out. I'm talking about an entertainment product. When an entertainment product is put out and it doesn't do well, the audience is blamed.
Right.
Whereas in the past, it would be, okay, we've got to figure out what the audience wants. Now it's like, you're going to watch our thing, and if you don't, we're going to blame you. So it's like we're just kind of in a different zone right now. And I also think
everything's an agenda. Everything's political, everything's agenda.
That's right. And just one more thing is Trump is not establishment. Trump didn't come up through the ranks. And so I think that both sides don't want any other people like that. Because why? They have no influence over him. And so I think that's part of the thing, too, to kind of, ostracize him or whatever. And they don't want anybody else to come along in that way. Because why? They lose power. That's why.
Right. Trump threatens the whole system. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly correct. As we've talked about, he threatens consultants, politicians, everybody.
There's no doubt about it. And the donors. And the super PACs. And the parties. Right? I mean, this is what I'm talking about, And so all of it. I mean, how much love is lost between Ronna McDaniel, who's running the RNC, and President Trump. I mean, you look at the curve of the most Trump-like candidate that's doing these debates, which is Vivek Ramaswamy, and you look at the public dust-up between Ramaswamy and Ronna McDaniel. I mean, that's a perfect example right there.
Yeah, look, I'll just tell you this. Trump is the only president who was never in a political office before or in the military before. and he's a billionaire. So he has no need for anybody and no dues to pay to anyone. And that's not what the system wants, because then nobody has any control over him. And we've seen that, and they don't like that.
Well, and you know, and again, we're not getting conspiratorial. Well, I don't know if anyone want to get down here.
No.
I don't even want to get down here. But let's say, let me approach this from a different standpoint. Where do you think we are at right now? Do you believe that some people have look, Vivek Ramaswamy is talking about super PAC puppets, and that certainly has implications. That basically, like, you know, and I'm not speaking for him, but you know, would someone come away from that thinking that, hey, these people are bought and paid for? Maybe not direct corruption. Well, he did say he had wrote a sign, if I remember correctly, Nikki Haley equals corrupt. And some people went over, even they tried to fact check it, like, look, you know, here's Nikki Haley's, Ambassador Haley's finances, you know, when she left, when she left office with Trump, I think it was something like, I thought I saw something about, you know, a lot of money in debt potentially in terms of loans out or whatever. I don't know. And now, you know, years later, she's got a net worth in the millions, like a lot of millions. And, you know, that has a certain feel to it for some voters potentially. But also, like, look, when we talk about super PAC puppets, what level of some people put out there that the false choice, that they don't really give you a real choice. Who would you think? Well, how do I want to phrase this? How bad do you think the current setup is right now? How much control? How much? You know, how far are we on track for what the original American Constitution system are? Are we off track from that? Where can we improve? How much control do the voters still have? Like, where are we at? If you look at certain things whether it be the green energy, you know, EV debacle, like, I mean, I drive a hybrid vehicle. It's cool. I like it, you know, but would I go all electric if I had to go long distances? No, I'm not prepared to go all electric right now. Maybe in the future. Similarly, like, you look at the border, out of control. People aren't liking that. People haven't liked that for a long time. It's still going this way. Again, Ukraine, you go issue after issue after issue. There's so many issues that the American people are one way and Washington, D.C. is another way. And it's just so where are we at right now? I mean, I guess a clear indication of that in sort of a reverse way is, you know, if you look at how popular Trump is, despite everything they've thrown at him, despite maybe, you know, his own personal style that some people doesn't mesh with some people, you know, and other people love it. I don't think Trump would be, let me put it another way. I don't think Trump would be this popular, Paul, and on the verge of clearly winning the Republican nomination if people didn't at least think and perceive that there's an issue in our political system.
I totally agree with that. I think that's true. As far as what the founders intended at all, it is my understanding, although I'd have to review, you know, the information, that they wanted more regular people to be involved in politics. Like, not your whole career was that. You do something, you go back to your life, and that's it. I don't know if they were envisioning people like Joe Biden being in Washington, D.C. for 50 years.
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you there. That's exactly right. If you watch John Adams, the series, great series, by the way, on HBO and stuff like that, or read Jefferson, Adams, Hamilton, all these people, I get it. It's I understand. But they would go to Washington for a few months, whatever it is, go back to where they lived. They all had their own businesses and jobs and other things like that, whether they were lawyers or printers or whatever it is. You know, they had other jobs, farmers. Now you've had the rise of the professional politician that just jumps from office to office to office to lobbying, you know, and 30 years in Washington and stuff like that. Some of these people, you know, when's the last time they've been back to their home district? When's the last time they've been home? I don't know, you know, I guess it's case by case, but you have a very much of a an insulation, a bubble. Washington, D.C. People talk about Washington, D.C. bubble. How connected are you to your voters, number one? And how connected are you to the outside world? When your job is politics, that's a different spin on it, Paul. It is different than what it goes. So go ahead. I want to continue with that, please.
Yeah, and look, we might have to talk about this a little bit more after the break. But what you just said there about being disconnected from your district, that is something. And that's not the only thing or the main thing. That is one thing that really hurt Liz Cheney in her reelection.
I was going to mention Liz Cheney. Absolutely, go ahead.
Yeah, Liz Cheney was hardly ever back to her district. In my recollection, she was basically living in either Virginia or DC or wherever it was, in that area. And they, her opponent, Harriet Hageman, zapped her on that, and there wasn't a lot of defense. And
it's getting even worse because you've got some people here. I mean, Secretary Clinton, I believe was running for office for senator of New York. There's people running for offices where they don't even live.
Yeah, that definitely happens.
Or they're just moving. I mean, there's just weird things that are going on now, and I just feel like this is going back to Anthony Codevilla, that famously put on the national map by Rush Limbaugh with the ruling class. And people are feeling like this is some kind of weird quasi-feudalism, and it shouldn't really be surprising. People are like, oh, you're being hyperbolic. That's the way that the world has worked for many places for so long. Okay, I mean, Europe is still like that. There's still a queen, now a king of England. Okay, there's still kings and queens around the world. There's still aristocracy. There's still different things like that. That's still a thing. Okay, so or party members in certain places or whatever like that. There's still that kind of hierarchy that gets imposed. So why do we think that wouldn't reemerge? Okay, I mean, America's been a very different thing, a different experiment from the history of the world. We've talked about that before. I don't get mired in history. Listen, we're winding down here. We're getting ready for that last segment. And this is Christmas. We want to have fun on Christmas. We're going to talk about some Christmas stuff. We're going to talk about family and fun and friends and everything like that. We still have a lot of news to cover too. We still have a lot of things to talk. We've got to talk about Harvard maybe. There's election 2024, the New Hampshire polls. There's so many different things to talk about. The economy. There's a lot that we're going to cover. Okay, so we'll just get ready for that last segment coming up here on Newstalk 1040 AM. You're listening to the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. There's a special Christmas edition. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, it's me, John D. Villarreal. You're listening to the John D. Villarreal radio show. I'm talking a little faster than I'm thinking here. I'm thinking faster than I'm talking. And this is on Newstalk 1040 AM. Hey, we are so happy. This is the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM. It's Christmas Day if you're listening to us on Newstalk 1040 AM. This is a special pre-taped Christmas show. I'm live right now on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and I'm joined by my brother, Paulette Villarreal. We're talking about the Colorado ruling against President Trump. We're talking about all kinds of election 2024. We're going to get into that. And listen, we also don't want to, and we are sponsored by Maserati of Sarasota, Alfa Romeo of Sarasota, and Sarasota Subaru. Come see us down at South Tamiami Trail in Sarasota, South Sarasota. Come see me. Come see everybody there. We're doing great deals to the end of the year. We'd love to see you right there. And you can also call us ahead of time to see what's going on. Check out some vehicles. Talk about it. 941-925-1234. That's 941-925-1234. Okay, so this is the last segment, Paul. It's Christmas. I've got all kinds of great Christmas memories with, granddad, grandmother, and putting up the big tree and all the presents and stuff like that and going to church, everything. But of course, Christmas is way more than presents. We know that. And, this is a hard time right now. We're going through a hard economy. Different things are happening out there. Like, what do you think? I mean, you're up in Pennsylvania. I'm down here in Florida. What's your gauge of the temperature right there, so to speak, if you will? Like, how are people feeling about this Christmas? There's things out there that consumers tapped out, like, less people going to church. Like, what do you think people are thinking about right now? Or what should they be thinking about on Christmas?
Well, look, I think what I would say they should be thinking about, of course, is, positive things. And if you're religious, that certainly those thoughts. Look, I see a lot of, there are people here that are happy, and, people are trying to be happy for the holidays, of course. There's a lot of difficulty right now. And I see that. And, it's harder to make ends meet now than it used to be just a few years ago because of the cost, the rising cost. That's what we've seen that in, homelessness numbers and different issues. And that's hard. That's tough. And like I said, on last week's show, that shows up more on the low end. That it really matters. A little bit more money matters a lot more on the low end than it does on the high end. So I'm seeing some of that because there's plenty of people here that are just, they're country people. They're not super wealthy, and they're trying to make it work, and it is challenging right now. And I've told you about this video that was posted to X of a woman that lives in Pennsylvania. I believe she lives near Harrisburg, which is not far from where I'm at. And she basically was breaking down and upset, and because she said, "Look, I have a full-time job. My husband has a full-time job. I think they have like 1 or 2 children." And they're like, we can't make it work. We don't have enough money. And so I'm definitely seeing that. I see that for sure.
Well, let me just say this. I want to interject this. And I was going to talk about this maybe, and I'll be a little vague about it just because you'll see. I was having a conversation today with someone at work, and a younger person, and I would not have known, just we had different conversations about different things, but we've never gotten into I don't know if she knows I'm on the radio. Not that matters. It doesn't matter whatsoever, other than obviously having a talk show. My job is to be up on the news, and I was talking to some of the staff at the management today at the radio station, and we're just talking about my show, and they're really great and how much they love the show and everything like that. And it's like, you can't get the show anywhere else. I'm like, oh, I appreciate that. And they basically called me a news junkie, which I am, and you are, and I have been for life. So I don't know. I'm just someone that's always tuned in on the news. It's not about me, but it's going to make the point here. So just based on our conversations, I didn't gather, we never really talked about news talk stuff, if you will. Okay, fine. And so we were talking about stuff and money and the economy and cars and stuff like that. Obviously, it's a dealership. And somehow it came up, and just out of this person's mouth, this young person, right, was how expensive things are, and how they have a young family and a young child and stuff like that, and basically was making the comment. I'd seen this from other commentators, and at first it's so shocking when you hear it, but then when you do the research and like, oh yeah, and then intuitively like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But basically, she made the statement about how during the Great Depression. Now, of course, like throughout the Depression, things got really, really bad, but right before, like the average salary with one person working, it somehow equated to roughly, I can't remember what it was, is roughly around $80,000. I'm not going to get this exactly right, but roughly right. So think about that before the Great Depression really, really hit, but right before, like people were making the equivalent of about $80,000 plus or minus. Maybe I'm a little bit off on that. You could basically have a nice house And if you look at the cost of housing and some certain things that were more affected by inflation over the years, you could have one parent working, one spouse working, one parent working. You could have raise a family, have a house, and everything off of one income, no problem. Didn't matter, blue collar, white collar, whatever like that. Just the average worker. Think of how crazy it is. Now, and I've seen different stats here too. So I've seen different numbers, anywhere from 30,000 to 50,000, whatever, 54,000, whether it's household or person. I mean, the average household, let's just call it in the 50s, is making 50,000, and that's two people working, and some people working multiple jobs. And here's a person who's basically starting her family, and trying to figure out how am I going to make it? How am I going to make it? And they basically, talked to me that they thought it was going to be the super rich, and everyone else was basically just going to be working for them. And my goodness, Paul, I mean, on one hand, I was saddened and shocked. On the other hand, I was really hopeful that here's someone that I've never talked politics with, who's a young person, young family, and they are tuned in. So this goes back to the only Trump vote. This goes back to Matrix, red pill, blue pill, whatever pill you want to talk about, whatever. I'm not into pills, but this is from the movie, right? It's an analogy, it's a metaphor. People are waking up. And when you see these debates with these lines and these campaigns out of the 1980s or 2000s, it's just no longer relevant. So you see the shock to the system that is Donald Trump and now Vivek Ramaswamy, and some degrees RFK Jr. Maybe, like, the average person now is tuned into this. They are feeling it. They're seeing it. $6, $6.50 a gallon of orange juice, and that's the store brand. That's the store brand. That's not name brand. That's not pasteurized. That's not organic. That's the store brand from Concentrate Player. I mean, it's really expensive, and people are feeling like they don't have any hope. So when you put people in that position, do you think they care about a tweet, Paul? Do you think they want to hear that the Supreme Court of Colorado has said that you cannot even have the opportunity to vote for President Trump in a GOP primary, and he hasn't even been charged or convicted of the very thing that you're pulling him off the ballot for? It's crazy. So, I mean, what do you make of that? Like, how salient, how informed of these issues do you feel like the regular person is now? Because when I heard that today, that kind of blew me away.
I think people are very informed of all different types. And the reason I say that is, we talked about this. There was a segment on one of the news stations today, and it was basically, they went down, and this was a follow-up segment. They had already done a segment here, and they basically went down to, is in the Bronx, and they asked just average people walking around. They're like, look, if Trump had a rally here, would you come to it? And of course, the Bronx is not like, you wouldn't think that's MAGA central. Anyway, there was, I would come. Yeah, I would go. I would go for sure. Why? Because the people felt like their lives were better under Trump. They have more money under Trump. And like you said, it's not about the tweets. It's not about anything. The world, I imagine a lot of people feel the world was safer and I have more money in my pocket then. And yes, these are, I'm sure a lot of the people in the Bronx, there's probably plenty of people that are very politically oriented, and there's probably a lot of people that aren't that politically oriented. They're totally aware of it. The person at your work is aware of it. I think a lot of people are aware of it. And how can you not be? If you got to pay $6.50 for an orange juice, you're going to think about that. I mean, I think about it, and, I think about it going to fast food or whatever. It's like everything costs so much, and it didn't cost that much before. And so people want to go back to what it was before.
That's absolutely crazy. With so much to talk about here, we've got about maybe 15 minutes, about a little bit less than 15 minutes, 14 minutes left here. And this is the last show of 2023 for the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM. I may be doing some more broadcasts live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. We will see. But this is the last show on Newstalk 1040 AM for the John D. Villarreal radio show here. Look, there's a lot of things here we're going to put on the table here, and we can jump in anytime we want to here. We talked about the economy. We talked about opportunity. Election 2024. We've been talking about that, but, I want to talk about these real quick, at least spend 5 minutes on the New Hampshire polls. There's been some battling New Hampshire polls, if you will. One showing Nikki Haley super surging and pretty close to President Trump. Another showing President Trump with a commanding lead. Where do we think, in light of all that's been happening this last week, where are we with this election right now on the GOP primary side? Because the primary is about to start. Like as soon as the New Year, early January, Iowa caucus kicks it off. What impact? Where do we stand right now with Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Paul?
Okay, so Iowa is 25 days from now. That's how close it is. Close. We're just right there. And like you said, once we jump past the holidays, it's right up on us. Trump looks like he's going to get a huge win in Iowa, which is, of course, what they're aiming for, his team. That's what they want. That's what it looks like it's shaping up to be. And they're going full steam ahead, him and surrogates all over the place there. New Hampshire, you mentioned the polls. There's actually a third poll that came out. So there's one poll with Haley down 14 points, one with Trump up 30 points, and then another one came out today with Haley only down 4 points. So we're getting stuff all over the place. The pollster that I trust the most basically said, he didn't call out anybody specifically, but he's basically said, we're seeing a lot of, dubious polls right now. And he complimented the poll that had Trump up 30. I'll just leave it at that. And again, this guy is very good, very detailed. He knows methodology, everything. So, for him to say that says something to me. I think that there's a desire. Obviously, we know the establishment wants Haley to do well, and New Hampshire is probably going to be her best state, even better than her home state of South Carolina, just because of the makeup of the state, the electorate there. We have to see. We've got about 5 weeks until that contest. I still think it's Trump. I still think it's Trump. And look, as we've talked about last week, Ted Cruz won 11 states. Even if she won a single state, so what? I don't know if that's going to really give her any momentum or be able to do anything for her. So that's kind of where we're at. There's just a battle of polls, and we're going to see all kinds of stuff between now and New Hampshire. There's no question, and buckle up for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And not only that, but you've got, right now, if you look at the national polls, right, you've got combined RCP averages. You've got Trump 63.8, DeSantis 11.6, Haley 10.8. That's just such a commanding lead. It's not even funny. Iowa, Trump 51.3, DeSantis 18.6, Haley 16.1. So right now, let's say Trump wins just by far, a majority, and then Haley comes in third. So what impacts that can have on New Hampshire? Now we've seen, Iowa and New Hampshire do different things than the other one. So we've seen a reversal of Iowa and New Hampshire that would not be uncommon. That doesn't necessarily mean anything one way or the other. Obviously, all these early states do definitely have impact, and there's no question that's one of the reasons why they want to be early, potentially, in my opinion. But even in New Hampshire with these different polls, RCP average, Trump 46.3, Haley 24.8. That's still like a 20 plus 22 point, 21 and a half point lead. Okay, that's huge. And Christie's at 10.5. Now DeSantis is in fourth. And so it just, I don't see it. Even if they get, okay, so if Haley, if DeSantis doesn't win Iowa or New Hampshire and Haley doesn't win South Carolina, what does any of this matter? I don't think it's going to matter anyway. But after that, like seriously, I don't get it, dude. How do they think any of this stuff's going to turn out?
Well, look, I think it's kind of a hope against hope, and it's the donor class and the establishment politicians. They're not on Trump's side, it seems, and so as long as they can try to have hope to try to have somebody go against him, in this case it's Haley, they're going to try to do it. So again, we're going to hear surges and momentum and everything until the New Hampshire primary. That's my case. If she gets beaten solidly there, I don't know if they're going to be able to try to hold on to her until South Carolina, because the truth is, even though that's her home state, that's a more conservative, certainly a more conservative state than New Hampshire, and Trump's going to do probably better there.
If you look at the prediction market, if you will, you've got a 75% chance that Trump's going to win the nomination. I think it's even higher than that. Then Haley at 13.2, DeSantis at 5.7, and everyone else is in low single digits. So I just don't see it, dude. I don't see any of this stuff panning out whatsoever. And look, we'll find out. We're going to find out soon enough. Now, we've got about 8 minutes left here, so let's try to put some other things on the table here. I mean, we think Trump's going to win the nomination. What about on the Democratic side? Like, what's the latest with Biden? I mean, I love the way, like, nobody's really covering RFK Jr. He was covered a lot when there was talk that he was going to hurt Trump and stuff. I mean, everything just seems very interesting in that situation.
Yeah, so what's happening is more polls have been coming out, including him. And what it's starting to show is he's either doesn't have really any effect at all, or maybe he slightly helps Trump. So I agree with you. He's been getting covered much less. Now, those are national polls. On a state-to-state basis, maybe he hurts Trump a little bit more. Like, he might have some effect here in Pennsylvania. But I think overall, the hope that he was going to be a big help to the Democrats is starting to fade. And because of that, he is getting less coverage. That's my opinion. I was going to say, that's what I think is up with him. He's trying to kind of reappear. Like, he actually came out to say that he thought the decision in Colorado was the wrong decision. So that kind of gave him some more spotlight. But right now, I just don't think he's much of a factor. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see about that. Now, there's more news about, the whole Harvard situation and everything like that. Like, I mean, without getting, I don't know that I want to get too much into that, but without getting too into that, like, where do you think we are with, higher education? I mean, there's been such a big shakeup of all this type of stuff, and, with whether it's donors and, I mean, where do you, I don't think we've seen the end of this stuff with Harvard. I think the story continues, right? And then so it's like, it seems like Harvard's sort of dug in a little bit and supporting the president, but there's more stuff that's come out now. There's even I don't know. I mean, let's not editorialize or opinionize on this, if you will, or give our opinions rather. Just from a prediction, just from an analysis standpoint, like, how do you think it's going to end up? Do you think that, and what do you think is Harvard's reaction to this? I mean, there was one person that said, like, hey, what would you do if this was a student? There was that kind of conversation, obviously.
Yeah, look, I mean, there have been, of course, this began with different reactions and protests and stuff, and then it came into a congressional testimony, and then there came certain accusations against the president, and those accusations have grown, more instances supposedly. And what you're starting to see now is that the media, like the New York Times and different other media, more leftward leaning in my opinion, are starting to cover this more. Where's it going to go? I don't know, but it's not going away yet. Let me put it that way. So I think that what has happened with the various protests and kind of the reactions to what has taken place, like in Israel, wherever you're at on it, has definitely made people think and rethink things at some of these elite institutions. And, it's causing shockwaves. And we have to see where that goes. But it's the most significant thing that I have personally seen in higher education in a long time.
I guess that's where I'm going with that, and that's how I want to. I think what you said there is almost perfect, which is this is more along the lines of take out the specific people and specific instances of those people that get it. It's more of this is another element, whether it's Trump, the Colorado ruling, that a lot of people are questioning these elite institutions, these elite academic. A lot of people are saying like, "Hey, this may not be serving us best anymore," or we want to see some reforms, or we have some questions. We want to have a dialogue, And I think that it's really putting some things under examination. And also, we talked about this before, like, there's a lot of conflicting viewpoints on the left, and I don't know if they can continue to square the circle. And so now, I talked about before, and other people are sort of picking up this terminology. I'm seeing that. I've seen Charlie Kirk talk about the Empire Strikes Back. I was saying that, right? I said I've been saying those kinds of things. So shout out to Charlie Kirk if you or anyone on teams watching the program, and I don't know, they're not far from where I'm at right now. Way bigger than I am, of course. I would love to have Charlie on the show. I'd love to be on his show at some point too. They do great work over there in Turning Point USA and his organization. But basically, what I was saying is that the year 2023 was year reality return, and 2024 was going to be the revenge of reality, right? Or reality strikes back, if you will. And I think that's what it is. I think that here's what's crazy, Paul. We still have like 10, 11 months to go here. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like almost 11 months to go to the next election. Like there's so much that has happened, so much that can happen. And I feel like it wouldn't surprise me if the political people have some kind of like calendar, some kind of something, some kind of plans, some kind of, we could see so many, I just think we're going to see so much crazy stuff in 2024, but I think that everything is just failing. It almost reminds me, as we wind down here, sadly enough, of these Disney movie launches, right? Because some of these things are like Marvel universe that we grew up with and stuff like that. Like you could do the work, you could put the money in, you could have the launch plan, and it just bombs, dude. It just fails miserably, and I'm just seeing that left and right. So listen, we got a minute left here. This is our final show, the final show of the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM for the year 2023. This is Christmas when it's going to air on Newstalk 1040 AM, live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook right now. Any final messages you have for 2023? Obviously, we want to thank the fans out there, thank the audience, thank the management, thank our sponsors. We're really happy with it. We can't wait to continue with the show. Anything you want to say in closing here, Paul?
Look, it's just been an honor and pleasure to be on the show and to be on 1040 and just be able to interact with people. I think it's been a lot of fun and just great.
It's been a lot of fun, and it's been great, and we have so many more plans, so many things we want to do. We hope to, inform you, entertain you. Again, we're for peace, love, freedom, opportunity for everybody, and we're all we love America and we love the world. We love everybody, right? So we want to continue to bring that, and we try to bring hope, light, peace, everything to everyone out there. And so, we can't save the world, but we're trying to do what we can to, make it better and have fun doing it. So anyway, for Paul, I'm John. Thanks. And for everyone here at Newstalk 1040, have a wonderful Christmas, a wonderful holiday, and have a great, great new year. And you're listening to John D. Villarreal. This is the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM and live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Thanks so much. Be well. Be blessed. See you next time.